supplement a little bit.
Great, thank you.
As organizers, do I have to use this?
Yeah.
How do you move forward and not get stuck when people are not caring about the stake that they hold, or when people don't feel passionate about, when people who are in positions where they're not being given resources don't care or don't want to be part of the movement? How do you not get discouraged, and how do you move forward and continue to organize?
Being in a houseless community, you come across a lot of negativity. And so what you have to do is to take the positive out that negativity. However, living in houses, trailers, apartment, campers is not for everybody. And you got to concentrate on those people that want to work or get involved in your organization. You know, I don't like riding horses, so I may want to drive a car. That don't mean I'm a bad person. I just go to the people that drive cars, and we can be in solidarity, know we need some type of transportation. So you got to focus on the people that want help, and you can't impose your concept on them because it's not for everybody. Every concept not for everybody.
I'm happy. No, it is a great question, and it's kind of the bane of complacency is the bane of the organizer's existence. And a couple of things that we do. One is prepare our organizers for knowing that they're going to go out and going to get that, right? We don't, measured expectations is really important in the work. Realistic expectations. And so the other thing that we do is we prioritize quality conversations, quality relationships over quantity. We'd rather our organizers go out and come back with one really dynamite contact. One contact. I know that's going to sound, when we first do our leadership development and our training, people are like, what do you mean one contact is amazing if it's a hot contact, and if that person shows up and that person becomes a leader, that's incredible, because it's so hard to kind of bring people in, get them to stick and retain, and then move up that leadership development ladder. And so who cares that you can fill up your contact sheet with 10 contacts that you're never going to see again? We'd rather that one really quality, hot relationship conversation. The other thing I would say is that as an organizer, you have to be inspired to inspire other people. And if you go out into the street, if you're not in the right frame of mind, don't go out on the street. Go home. You know what I mean? Don't try it, because you're not going to be successful. So organizing is a special job. It's a really difficult job, and it's one of those jobs that we don't seem to really. There's not a ton of enough pride or enough support for careers as being a community organizer. We think, it's something that you do when you're 25 and then you move on to get a real job. It's like we don't value being a community organizer as a real job, and we don't pay it to be a real job, and that's a problem, and that's, I think, would help with some of that issue.
That's good.
Questions?
You've talked a lot about sort of relationships with legislators and policymakers. I'm wondering if I guess you don't really have to choose between these two things, but if you could talk a little bit about working with the current system and what avenues you found that are successful to working with policymakers on your different issues, and whether you think there are effective ways, or if we really just need to find a different way altogether, and how you place priority on those two things at the same time.
That's a really great question. And I think it depends so much around context. I gotta say, like, the stuff that like Right to Survive and Right to Dream 2 are what they're doing is amazing. I mean, talking about organizing that is creating like something new. And it's like, it's not like they're not engaging the city council, but they're also actually creating kind of new ways of being and new solutions, and it's amazing. I think that's really needed in the context of trying to address issues like the problems with mass incarceration. kind of have to actually change the laws. Because if you don't, we're going to continue to have and see like this massive prison buildup that this country has been in. And, like, unless you figure out some sort of like armed revolution strategy to like dismantle the. But I don't see any other way, right? It's like without sentencing reform, without changing criminal sentencing law, we will continue to actually put massive amounts of people in the system for sentences that are too long. And there's a whole bunch of folks that are in there that actually should be, there's all this addiction-driven crime that like should be actually dealt with through drug courts, through addiction treatment, through community supervision. And we only do that by changing the laws. And so I think it's really about context. But we need to both actually change the existing system, but I do think that we need to be creative enough to envision new ways of being in the world, for sure. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I grew up in Chicago, and the first college I went to was a business college where somebody like Macy's or Nordstrom's or Saks Fifth Avenue's grandchildren would go to. And so it was back in the 70s, and I had, Michael Jackson and Africa and stuff. So I wanted to make everybody into my environment, and my counselor told me, in order to beat the system, you got to get within the system, or due process going to take its place. So I think we need to vote for people that's going to work for us. The government is supposed to be for the people, not the people for the government. And I also think how to beat that is, can I use you all as an example where this group own a building, you own a business, and you own a business, and this business not doing well. You don't go in and take over that business. You go in and say, what can we do to help you to make your business work better? And that's called emergence, where everybody gets together and build up each other's community so it can keep going. And that's how you defeat higher tax bracket, homeless people, drug addiction, because then you helping people out. They're not losing their business, say, oh, I'm no good. And we got to teach everybody that failure is not sin, low aim is.
The only thing I would add is in the right context, you got to look at who it's transparency, it's accountability, but it's also representation. And so you look at the boards or commissions that ultimately end up adopting these budgets or hold the decision-making power. Who are they representative of? So I don't know what your Metro board looks like, but I'd be surprised if you had a transit-dependent person on that Metro board. And if you do, that's amazing, because we certainly don't have that. We have 7 people on the TriMet board. Only one of the 7 regularly uses public transit. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? What would it look like if our city council had a formerly houseless person? Because maybe the day will come when someone who's actually houseless, but what would that look like in terms of the appreciation and in terms of the consideration? And so, one thing that we're starting to do at Opal is really target the TriMet board and try to get a transit-dependent person to be sitting on that TriMet board, getting a labor representative to be sitting on that TriMet board, demanding that everybody ride the system, even if they're privileged choice riders or whatnot. If you're not riding the system, why are you sitting on a board making decisions for a system, right? So working within the policy, but changing the representative structure to make it more accountable.
Questions?
So I have kind of a 2-part question. First, in all of your work, you're all working in systems and dealing with problems that have to do with discrimination, with racism, with institutionalized problems. So to what degree do you feel that's upon you to bring that into your work, and how do you bring that into your work as it relates to the budget? And as you said, like where the money comes from, where it goes, how is the racism and the discrimination, how does that become part of your story?
I'm glad you asked that question. We bring a very explicit racial justice lens to our environmental justice and transit justice work. It makes a lot of folks in Portland uncomfortable. Why aren't you transit riders union. Why do you have why just the bus? Well, there's an identity around the bus, and this is not just in Portland. This is in Seattle. This is nationally. There's a pejorative connotation. There's a negative connotation with the bus. The bus is for poor folks. It's for brown folks, and it's dirty. Light rail is white and clean and sexy and safe, right? And so this is racialized. And so if we're not explicit with it, if we don't lead with it, then we're not gonna we're not gonna change those budget investments and those policies. We're not educating folks about well, why are we investing so much in light rail when we could fund 100 buses with the same amount of money. So for us it is very racialized, and that's actually challenging a little bit internally because because transit ridership is so cross demographic. I just made up a new. I don't know if that's right, but we get a lot of low-income white folks who don't have a really strong racial justice analysis, and we feel like it's our job as part of our membership to bring that to them because, frankly, part of the struggles of this country, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, is that poor white folks they think they're more like rich white folks. They don't realize that they're more like poor brown folks, and that's one of the fundamental problems with our country, and we do our tiny little part to try to break that down within the context of transit ridership, but we try to be very aggressive about that because not enough groups are.
What I do when I go to a group of people or give in panels or lectures like this, I usually like to break the ice and ask them what do they see when they see me. And they look, I say, according to the American government, I'm the 3 worst thing in this country. That's homeless, Black American, and a Muslim. And I tell them, if I can get out there and make it, you can make it. And I tell them where my blood is red, your blood is red. So we have to combine our efforts. And I give them that parable of the Bible. It's called the Tower of Babel, when everybody was one and the Spirit came down and gave different languages. And the only thing that was missing was an interpreter. Okay, I'm the interpreter. You're human. You need to sleep. You need to eat. You need to use the restroom. You need shelter. And who in here don't need that? And they see the commonality within themselves. And they start seeing, well, wow, that's how the government defeat us, by separatism. By separating gender, by separating same-sex, they're separating people, spirituality. And so if we all can realize that we are human and have that one human need and cry out to this government, I don't want to take over the government. I just want the government to realize they're working for us and they need to hear our cries and our voices.
Yeah, I mean, I think that institutional racism is a very, very serious problem, and we're not going to address it if we're not talking about it and actually helping to develop a shared analysis around what it is, how it's being perpetrated, and what the solutions are. And so we try and figure out actually how to infuse an explicit race analysis in our work, whether it's in our membership kind of engagement work, and it's our public education work, or it's our legislative work. So I think that the kind of explicitly talking about it is key, but also, frankly, we also need to develop policy tools to deal with it if we're going to try and also address institutional racism and the racial disparity in the system. So one tool we're trying to put forward that just passed the Oregon Senate that we've been working on a few days ago, actually on Tuesday, is something called racial impact statements. And they only exist right now in, I think, 3 other states. And hopefully, if we get it together, they'll be in Oregon. And I'm not actually even beginning to suggest that this is a cure-all, but I mean, it's going to take a lot. But we do need to develop policy tools that actually help us identify how racial disparity is playing out within the system, and so we can actually address it. So what racial impact statements do is they allow the legislators to ask for the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission to develop a statement, just like a fiscal statement or environmental impact statement, of how proposed criminal sentencing laws, or actually child welfare laws, would would change like racial and ethnic makeup of folks within the criminal justice system or the child welfare system, for better or for worse. Through that analysis, that allows, first of all, advocates and organizers on the ground to be able to then call that out, and frankly call legislators out who then, once they have a statement that clearly identifies something as making racial disparities worse and they vote for it, those, for lack of a better term, bleep, should be held accountable. They should be held accountable. So we need policy tools as well. So it's not just about conversations and not just about education, right? It's also about like how we change in the system that will help manage the change.
All right, John, Ibrahim, David, thank you so much. You've been amazing. And I want to thank you all too for coming today and participating in today's summit, Grantee Summit. I hope that what we've presented has been inspiring, that it's that you're starting to get some clues as to why this work is so important, that you feel empowered to go out and make things happen, that you see that you're not alone, that you realize that there's a whole bunch of folks out there working really hard, don't get a lot of press coverage, but are incredibly amazing people doing incredible work. So I hope you'll join us for pizza, a little bit more networking, casual conversation with participants and presenters alike. We're going to be at Zeke's Pizza. Does everybody know where that is? Yeah, we'll have a